Hello, friends, and welcome to Worldbuild with us, the podcast where we create fantastical worlds with help from you, our listeners. My name is Rob Hilferty. I'm here with my co-hosts Daniel Quinn and Courtney Staples. On today's episode, we have a prompt from our listener Seth, who has an email that sounds a little bit like this. How about a Land of a Thousand Suns prompt? Kind of the opposite of the Land of a Thousand Sunsets, in that it's an always daytime on Tatooine sort of place, with numerous suns of various sizes and distances blazing down depending on the season and time of day. How did it get that way? Who are the people that live here? Are they natives? How do they survive and or adapt? This could easily be a sci-fi or fantasy setting, or even something in between. So Seth, thank you very much for submitting your prompt. And remember that if you want to submit your own prompt and have us build your world, you can always email us at worldbuildwithus@gmail.com. So today we're going to dive right into it. Who wants to get us started with their first tenet?
Should I wait to throw my curveballs until after we build stuff so I can break it, or do you want me to start with a curveball?
Start with a curveball. Do it up.
All right. I've got one that's outrageous and one that's kind of normal. So I'll start with the outrageous one.
I was going to say, I want to go outrageous right out the gate. Yeah.
I was going to say, and as I say this, just take a deep breath, because the end of the sentence will make you less afraid, in particular, Rob. Okay. So
is it fear or rage that I'm going to experience?
You'll have rage basically, but just wait till the end of the sentence. So, or the statement. So my first tenet is that in this setting there are no humans because there are only machines that are sentient.
Interesting. Okay. That I don't find anything wrong with that. That's not going to upset me at all. Okay.
Good. I was worried that you were thinking because there's only dwarves.
No, even if it was no, Chris isn't on this episode, so there's no way.
Yeah.
No, but even if it was hey, we're only doing fantasy races, I'm actually kind of cool with that. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
It's not my cup of tea, but I'll do it. That doesn't mean I'm going to do a dwarf episode, but still.
Oh my God, that means patrons, you have to lobby for a dwarf episode.
Mm-hmm. It's the only way it's going to happen.
Yeah, I have a filtration system built in, so I don't think that's going to work, unfortunately. But hey, if if someone wants to become a patron and give us money just for a dwarf prompt, I mean, I will take that. I will gladly take that. No problem. So Daniel, why machines and why humanoid robot machines here?
I got a Isaac Asimov vibe just from the description of the prompt and the images it gave in my head. And I was thinking back to iRobot and Foundation and series where they're thinking machines. And for some reason, I think with a place that has so many suns, maybe this environment isn't the sort of place that humanity thrives in, or maybe is no longer there, or has yet to arrive. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So my first question is, of course, are these robots solar powered?
Ooh, I like that.
So that way it's hey, we're constantly at full energy because there's no nighttime, right?
It seems like maybe they need the more suns the better.
And then of course there's an implication that suggests that the only place that they would be powered down is underground or in some sort of shade, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which now of course makes me think that this is a mining planet of some kind. But that's not my tenet. I'm just spitballing here, but we'll go from we'll start somewhere else. Courtney, give us less of a curveball. Throw it right down the middle.
Sure. So speaking of shade, I actually did have one related to a very dark place. Was thinking about was thinking about of course, when you think of a planet has all these suns, you think desert, hot and dry.
Mm-hmm.
But I started going in the direction of what if plants had evolved to actually take in all of the sunlight that they could manage and basically just ballooned out from there into this giant mega rainforest that covers a huge portion of some area. I imagine it would be around a body of water or next to one. And So of course there's all these massive trees and whatever lives there. Um, and underneath the canopy, it would probably be like really, really dark because you have these massive trees blocking all of the sunlight. So it's essentially like walking into a cavern when you walk in there.
Fascinating.
Ooh.
Okay. So this is like the one place in the entire planet that would be like dark, but it's also a massive. Are we talking like a continent-sized like jungle area that we're talking about here, like a rainforest of some kind?
Yeah, I mean, I could picture it being pretty huge.
Okay.
I like that the inversion of like, you know, the expectation of desert, but you've got this massive lush jungle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It subverts it.
So I now have to come up with a new tenet, of course, because one of my tenets was I didn't want there to be a focus on arid and desert-y type terrain. I wanted a robust ecosystem. So I'll have to think of something new.
Okay, well, to actually kind of merge my and Daniel's ones together in a way. Daniel, you had mentioned like maybe humans had been there before and died out. What if the rainforest is actually like their terraforming effort?
Oh, I like
And
that.
maybe it just got wildly out of control and grew far beyond what they expected it to. And for some reason, the humans died out at some point.
Yeah, I've got like a million ideas for that already.
I know there's so many places that go. Just questions like, where did the humans go? What happened to them? What mistake did they make? All those things.
Yeah, right. And then, of course, when you have robots, of course, or humanoid robots, you then, of course, have to think, well, how are they the remnants? Was there an uprising of the robot variety? But that's lame. Let's not do that. Instead, I like the idea that these like remnants of humanity use these robots as like a database, essentially, or like a pool in which they can have individuality. Like they've basically downloaded their consciousness into these things. But there's like a fluidity with their physicality. So it's like they create new, you know, robot bodies. And then once that one dies, they basically put themselves back in the matrix and then wait for a new body to respawn or get reformed.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I like that I like the two ideas. They're like, one, that they have inherited humanity's collective consciousness, and two, that they have like a physical reality and then like an afterlife intermediary reality.
Yeah. So it's I guess with my tenet basically dead in the water, or at least made redundant by Courtney's, I'm going to go with my other one.
Sorry.
No. I'm glad that we're like on the same page there. I'm going to actually introduce one of my major one, because this is the one that I wanted to get out kind of early so we can kind of paint the rest of the world with these shades in mind. It's a very simple tenet in that I want this to be a deeply horror themed setting, because much like Daniel, I like twists. And of course, when you think of horror, you tend to think of darkness. You tend to think of like, you know, Barovia, basically, right? And I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool and fun and interesting to do a sun-drenched horror setting?
Yeah, that's making me think of what's that sci-fi movie? Is it Sunset or Sunshine? Yeah,
that one was weird.
I don't know that movie.
It was weird. It went in a weird direction.
Yeah, could you tell them a little bit about what it was?
Sure. So it's set like in the future. There was some like geoengineering or something happened.
The sun was dying.
Right, the sun was dying, and a ship was sent from Earth to go basically drop a nuke on the sun and like restart it, because that's how it works.
Definitely. Yeah, of course.
Yes.
And so it follows this like crew that's been out there already traveling for a long time as they approach the sun, and gets.
I do know this.
Yeah,
I do. And like in the third, spoilers for this movie.
Yeah.
In the third act, it's like you find out that the previous crew didn't actually, like, they were murdered by their captain or something like that.
Yeah, that's where it kind of goes off the rails, and I wasn't really into it after that. Yeah.
But the reason why I think of it is there was the bright scenes, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Also Midsummer too. that had a lot of
Yeah,
sunlight.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. Like I want to see more of stuff like that. So
Mhm.
for the next couple tenets, let's remember that horror theme, horror theme, horror theme. And I think
Mhm.
that with Daniel, with the previous tenets that we have already, I think that's very, very doable. So
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
excited to see how else we can paint this in a horrific sense.
Yeah. I mean, I had one that was going to get into weaponry.
Oh,
So
do go on.
so the idea of like using prisms or glass as a way to concentrate sunlight into like beams of
Oh
energy that
God.
can fry things, kind of like the magnifying glass that can start a
Ooh.
fire, but like really amplified.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Or I was thinking like when you were not you, but when Daniel was a small child and he would like burn ants with magnifying
right,
glasses, stuff like
exactly.
that.
I
Yeah.
Yeah.
had ant farms. I would never hurt an ant. I love them. I did
I
try
I
to dig for queens though. That was illegal.
Yeah, Daniel, I too had ant farms because I was
Yes,
also a
weren't they
big
great?
ant nerd. Yes, yes, I absolutely agree with you on that
All
one.
I wanted was a queen, and I could never get one.
Oh,
Same. It's
Yeah.
yeah, they're very difficult. And then of course when you're like, "Hey mom and dad, can I order a queen off of the
You're
internet?" They're
like,
like,
no.
"What?" Yeah, exactly. They look at me like I'm some big fucking weirdo or something.
Yep.
Like, come on.
I didn't know you liked
Um,
ants. That's a conversation we have to have.
yeah. So this podcast is now about ants.
But Courtney, like that, I like that idea because it means that you could have solar powered weapons that never
mhm.
yeah.
run out of fucking energy.
Right, yeah. There's actually a weapon in Fallout New Vegas that's solar powered called Archimedes,
Hmm.
which I was thinking of when I thought of this idea. And that's like a kind of giant laser beam type thing, but I could see it coming in all shapes and sizes. And to kind of draw on the horror element, it could also certainly be used for torture.
That's what I was
Yeah,
thinking of as
yeah.
well.
Hmm.
That's why I brought up the ants.
Hmm.
Um, interesting. So I'm also thinking it's like it's just a good source of electricity as well.
Right, yeah.
I mean, so you could have like arc reactors or like Tesla coils of some kind, but it's all it's all green. It's all
How does it
solar
factor with
powered.
the machines? Because so the robots, to be clear, I picture like they're not like synth machines or like people that are human. Like they're robots. So
Hmm.
I wonder, like, are these weapons used among the robots against each other, or is it like for a different purpose?
Is this a story of genocide by the robots?
Mm.
Oh, you mean them killing others? I feel like that's too played out, right?
I mean, it's a good question, but is it
Mhm.
well? If because in my mind, this could just be like a colonization story, right? Like humans trying to colonize a world, and then they're in too deep, right?
Mm.
Mhm.
Maybe interesting. Maybe it could be like the robots trying to reclaim their bodies, like humans trying to reclaim their bodies from something else. But I'm not, that's like a half baked idea. I'm trying to figure it
Mhm.
out on the fly. You know what I mean?
I guess
Yeah.
yeah. The other question too is like, is the nature element opposed to the robots? Is it aligned with, or are they completely separate things? I guess that's the first question.
I would probably like to try and stay away from machine versus nature, considering
Yeah.
that I feel like we just did that idea back with the Undercommon Taste
So maybe they
guys.
can be aligned in some way.
Hmm. Or maybe it's just it doesn't necessarily have to be directly adversarial so much
Mhm.
as this is a thing that exists, right?
Right.
Hmm.
Because we established that the humanity is not in the picture anymore, but they're in the picture in the sense that they're like spiritually linked to these machines
Mm-hmm.
through their
Yeah.
history. And we know that the or Courtney, you said that the nature element may have been something caused by humanity, whether
Hmm.
inadvertently or inadvertently.
Hmm.
Yeah, a terraforming
Mhm.
experiment.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
yeah.
What if so given that like the human consciousness is in these machines, what if I mean over time almost in a sort of solitary confinement those consciousnesses start to kind of lose it and
Mm-hmm.
get a little nuts and
I like that.
um lose their grip on reality, which is amplified of course by having to live in like a robot body. That's where the like torture horror aspect comes in.
Oh, so
Okay.
maybe it's machine versus machine. Like
Mhm.
maybe some of the disturbed machines are also not only there's the torture happening psychologically, but maybe they're actually against each other. Like some of them are psychopaths or killers and whatever.
So I'm trying to figure out what the main conflict of this planet would be.
Mm-hmm.
Is this, and I suppose because
Oh,
in
I've got
my
a question
mind,
for you.
I'm sure you do, Daniel. But in my mind, right, the way that I'm initially imagining this planet is a somewhat untamed planet, but we don't necessarily have to approach it that way. We could have empires and, entire nations on this planet, And I think that might be an interesting way that we can approach this, where instead of a desolate planet, they're like colonized or, because the humans came here to terraform, obviously, right? And so when the robots kind of gained sentience, that's when they started to create their own empires, my guess. And so maybe that's where we can kind of get into interest. Okay, see, again, I keep drifting because I keep having these weird ideas. Like maybe there's only a set number of humans on this particular, who are in these robots, which means that there's only a certain number of robots in total. Which
The one
means
thing
that
the one thing I want to like, avoid though is like I don't mind human beings being in the background historically, but my
Mhm.
tenet's about these are not humans.
Yeah.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right, they're robots.
Right.
Okay. Well, I mean, what I suppose my question then to you, Daniel, is what kind of story are you trying to tell when it comes to robots? By taking humanity out and
Yeah.
by having just robots be in the setting,
Mhm.
what do you give us to work with in terms of conflict and desire and ambition?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't mean to say like human elements are missing, just that like I don't want humans to be like puppeteering the robot, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like in a way, like I would like the robots, even if they are human like, to be the actual protagonists.
So how do we make that happen, and how do we make it so they're not just humans in robot suits? Because my major qualm with all
Yes.
fantasy races is that they're just
Yes.
humans. So
Mhm.
if we're going to do this, I have to
Yeah.
do it right, Daniel.
So we got to workshop what's their motivation then. That's different than humans. That's alien to humans. Like
Right.
we as humans, we have a handful of motivations built into us. Like we like telling stories. We're very social. And we want to procreate, right? Those are probably
Right.
we can really argue with those three things, perhaps, right?
Right. So what do robots offer us in return?
Maybe I can give you a
Also,
tenet that would help.
well, if you have one, go right ahead. But I would like to throw this out there as well. Maybe because you said that there's just no humans and it's all about the robots. Do we have to make it so there's not any other sentient life besides the robots? Is that part of your tenet as well?
No, I think that there could be other sentient life. Yeah.
Okay. So with that in mind, hit me with your second tenet. What is it?
So my second tenet pertains to your question about conflict, which might help. And the prompt said there was multiple stars in the system. Like there's a trinary, quaternary, multiple stars in the
Yeah,
system.
multiple suns. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm thinking one of those stars is a red supergiant. So it's a star that's already really huge. So one of the really giant ones. And as we know, the larger stars are, or the more massive they are, the shorter their lifespans. And so this one, I want to be a red supergiant, meaning that it only has a few 100,000 to a million years to exist before it explodes in a supernova.
Okay. That's interesting. But at the same time, if we're a million years away, then that doesn't really affect our story, does it?
Oh, I mean, it's
In the
total
day.
lifespan, as opposed to a star having like 4 billion years to work with. So I don't know where we are in its life cycle, but it only had 100,000 to a million years to work with total.
I gotcha. So we could be pretty close to the end at this point.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So why don't we cut out the boring shit, which is the 100,000 to a million years? I'm sorry, 100,000 to 909,000, et cetera, years, and make it so we are now in the last
Yeah.
decade.
Yeah.
So
Like
we're
that.
in the last decade of this star's life, and
Right.
everyone knows it. So let's
Yeah.
start there. I think that's a better starting point for sure.
Exactly. So maybe that
Okay.
will help you about the question of robot intentions. I don't know.
So, I mean, well, ultimately, wouldn't the robots just want to? I mean, do they want to continue surviving? What's the intent behind the robots? I guess what's their ambition?
I guess if they're gonna have alien ambitions, maybe they don't want to flee and they want to face the supernova in some way.
Okay. Okay. Courtney, help us out here.
Yeah, as far as like thinking about robots as like logical and interested in research and science, like, yeah, maybe they do want to see and experience that moment as like research in a way, even though they won't survive after it.
Okay. Maybe the acceleration of this star, maybe the death of this star has been accelerated by the robots. And
Mm, yeah.
maybe their purpose is to cause extinction level events and to observe them
Oh,
in some way.
yeah. So they created that this was a normal star
Mm,
they turned into a red supergiant that then to a supergiant that then they caused to go red
I like
because
that a
Right.
they want
lot.
the
Yeah.
supernova to happen.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And then they're observing this planet to see what its effects are. They're
Mhm.
they're essentially just like really curious scientists, but with absolutely no morals for any human
Yes.
or any
Mm,
life in general.
That's what I want. I like
yeah.
that because now you've got these beings that they have the curiosity that humanity has, but it's to such a strange extreme that they're their own thing.
Hmm.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. All
Oh, that's
right.
messed up. I like that.
Yeah, no, I'm liking this as
Mhm.
well. Because again, I was thinking, well, how do we add in my horror element, and
Yeah.
what
Mm,
is more horrifying than the cold nothingness of steel and circuitry, right?
It's fucked up.
mm,
Okay, so we have a planet that is being observed because these weird fuckers. Oh, actually, hold on, wait a minute. Sorry. You know how we were saying that the humans are kind of in the background of these robots?
Mhm.
mm,
uh, Maybe we can just make them prisoners within the
mm.
machines.
Yes.
Ooh.
So
Yes.
their consciousness is trapped within these machines. Maybe that's what happened. Is maybe what happened is these robots, right, were supposed to be inhabited by human minds. They
Mhm.
were supposed to be colonists. They were supposed to be, terraforming this planet in order to get it ready for inhabitation. And then something happened where where it no longer worked, and so the humans can still see and hear and experience everything that inside of their robot bodies, but they are completely held prisoner by these like by the machines themselves.
I
Wow.
love that. That's like
That's
Get Out
awesome.
in a way.
Mhm.
It's horrifying.
Yeah.
Like imagine like being a prisoner in your own body. Like that is just ugh.
That
Yeah.
Yeah.
also makes me think of for some reason thematically it connects me to the jungle because now I see the jungle as this place to hide from the robots and hide from them and escape. And
Mm,
perhaps like I don't know, maybe like not all of the robots are because they're curious creatures. Like so maybe some of them are in tune, a handful are in tune with the prisoners they have, and they've decided to flee from the larger society and go into the jungle, and in the
mm.
Hmm.
jungle there's not light like underneath the canopies of it, and so maybe it allows the human consciousness to take hold of those machines.
Oh yeah, at the cost of like physical weakness
Hmm.
or even mortality.
Yeah, because now the machine doesn't have enough power to run, but the human
Hmm.
consciousness is overlaying it.
Hmm.
That's fascinating. Like and so there's obviously this like kind of weird ballet that those who are in control have to keep in mind, where every time they go and recharge their solar battery, there is a chance that that robot consciousness takes over again.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Or it could, I mean, it's, or, and it could be too that maybe those robots had a communication with their consciousness, the human consciousness inside of them, and the human promised them death. And so they've journeyed into the jungle so their minds can finally die because the robots are immortal, and the human consciousness takes over that robot body. But now it's weak because it has no solar power.
Hmm.
So you could have a human robot uprising.
Okay, so I suppose my question now becomes, is this rebellion really trying to stop the extinction of this planet? Because it's basically already been written that it's going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's irreversible at this point. So is
Mhm.
this really just about saving the humans that are left, or is it about something else?
It's a good question because I feel like I don't want it to become a narrative where it's like, okay, the humans are trying to resist the robots and it's
Agreed.
the underdogs, you know, like that's just a boring story.
I think the more horrifying idea and the
Mhm.
more thematically appropriate concept would be the humans understand they are in a hopeless situation,
Mhm.
and thus it much like life, it's all about creating your own meaning. So
Yeah.
you're a prisoner within this metal shell, and then what you do once you gain consciousness is entirely up to you. So some people but they all understand the rebellion is like
Fruitless.
impossible.
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's then, I suppose the story then becomes, what do you do when you have no hope but you have consciousness, right? Like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
I
they're free in
imagine
the
it's
jungle now. So it's like kind of a
right.
metaphor to be in the woods. Like, what do you do in the woods?
Or I mean, it's also a bit of a, it's a cave metaphor,
Yeah,
like that
exactly.
philosophical idea. And
I like
interesting.
that. I think that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
I can
Okay.
see some Annihilation vibes. You know, you're going into the freaking weirdo jungle. You're in a body you don't even understand that was never yours,
Mhm.
and you know
Mhm.
the world is ending.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't stop it.
There's also like another existential dread element of like, what if these robots had been used on other planets? So these
Mhm.
people know that this might be happening everywhere, and
Yeah.
that maybe humanity as a whole is just being overtaken.
Mhm.
Mhm.
See, I'm very curious about that concept, because in my mind, it's not about preventing their own death.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
preventing the deaths of others by stopping these robots from continuing on to another planet.
Mhm. Yeah.
In that way, we can have a cool rebellion story without it being about like saving their own selves, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Well, and the robots, they see this as a form of transcendence, right? Like, or always understanding that they're destroying them. They're witnessing and causing these destructions to gain knowledge that's unattainable,
Yeah.
right?
I see, in my mind, I wouldn't even have them classify it as ascendance. It is
Mhm.
merely data gathering more than
Right. It's just
anything else.
understanding, you know.
Right.
Like we could, for all we know, these machines might be connected in ways that defy known physics. So like
Mhm.
one set of them is completely eradicated by the supernova, but then others elsewhere in the universe gain that knowledge.
Mhm.
And that's my
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
Because that's why I think, like, if we have them connected,
Mhm.
that is something that humans can fight against at the very least.
Right.
They understand they can't fight against this extinction,
Mhm.
but maybe the last vestiges of humanity. It's not about winning. It's
Right.
about preventing that data from going forward. Which
Mhm.
again,
Planting an idea in their consciousness, you know.
oh, that's so now we're getting into an Inception level event, which is
Yeah.
also rather
Yeah.
interesting.
Oh yeah, because the journey into the jungle could be a metaphor for like journeying into the dark of their logical consciousness and planting a concept.
Are you suggesting that this is some sort of heart of darkness, Daniel?
Mhm.
Yes, I like it. I
You
hated
know
that
who
book
else
in
liked
high
it?
school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was going to say every high school English teacher.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe
okay.
maybe like if you there's so many ways you could take this, like when we start thinking about like how do you plot hook this, but like the jungle might not actually exist. It might only be a fiction in the minds of those awakened, in those bodies for all we know.
I would like to try and stay away from metaphors for Eden if possible.
Oh
You
yeah,
know?
yeah. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
mean Eden, but you know what I mean. Like it's like a
Mhm.
journey of the mind in a sense, which would be weird.
Mhm.
Yes. Okay. Did everyone get through their tenets?
Yeah. I did both of mine.
Yeah, me
Okay.
too.
Oh, okay. Actually, can we circle back to Courtney's tenet about the laser guns? I
Oh
mean,
yes,
about
we
the
need to solve that.
right, because we do
Yeah.
need to. In what way is this particularly horrifying? Right,
Mhm.
like how can we make sure that this is just really brutal and awful now? Because that's what I'm interested in.
Hmm.
Well, what are some of the elements of it? We know the machines are powered by the sun, and so is the jungle.
Mhm.
I'm thinking that this is the only way that you can feel pain.
Oh,
Mm.
Like
interesting.
because that's the only reason that this thing would be a threat. It's
Mhm.
not the idea that your body's being destroyed, because they're robots. Who cares about that? Like, you're
Right.
not feeling that. Even the humans inside aren't feeling that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So in this way, it's got to be that, oh dear God, this sun weapon, it destroys me, sure, but worse, it causes me pain, which is like illogical and terrifies the robots. And also because humans are trapped inside, they can probably feel it in a different way.
Who made
Mhm.
these weapons then?
Maybe the natives did.
Oh, the aliens. Maybe are there aliens in the jungle?
Well, so the jungle, if it was a terraforming thing, then
Mhm.
that would have been there after the natives had evolved, right?
Mm-hmm. Unless they're really ancient.
Yeah.
I mean, these weapons. The weapons they're powered by the sun, or they use the sun's energy to cause pain. Is it
They
or
use the
both?
sun's energy. I was picturing like prisms that
Uh huh.
focus sunlight intensely.
And
Mm.
I'm just wondering, like, is this like a weapon that is used? It can be used against the machines, or do they also use them? Like, who uses these weapons?
These are all excellent questions. I'm very
Mm.
curious to hear Courtney's answers.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all on me now? Come on.
It's your baby.
Okay. Returning to the whole like cold logical research mindset, like what if that's also something that they're studying is pain, and
Oh.
um that's why they're using these weapons for
That
more
is
study.
actually really horrifying, because
Yes,
what's
it is.
scarier than cold, unfeeling robots? Cold, unfeeling robots that are obsessed with pain.
So the
Uh,
lasers allow them to focus the light in such a way that it can cause them pain.
Since the suns give them energy, this could be like an overload kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
hmm.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I was also thinking like it's you're just channeling a frequency that, we would instead of a UV ray or like heat necessarily, it's something else.
Mm.
That's
Suffering ray, suffering band of light.
right. Well, I mean, to the robots, that's
Yeah.
essentially what it would be. Yeah. But to
Mhm.
us,
Okay.
it's like a gamma ray that we don't even feel because we're constantly,
Uh
bombarded
huh.
by it or something like
Mm.
that.
Then I could see this becoming a very like, I have no mouth, but I must scream kind of
Yeah.
thing.
We're
We're
deep in
way
that
into that,
territory
yeah.
for
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
The Harlan thing.
Mhm.
Yep.
I mean, I also like the idea of like, okay, if you're a robot or you're a human in the robot consciousness, the robot machine, like that really sucks because you're a prisoner. But then if you're like kind of wake up and you're carrying yourself along with the robot into the jungle, who the fuck knows what's in that jungle? And
Yeah.
you're gonna face different misery because now you don't have the light and
Mm.
you're in this body that's not your own, and you're suffering in it too. So it's like there's no escape on either side.
Mhm.
I like the idea that the jungle is safe, though, compared to the rest of the world. I find that idea to be more interesting to me because, like I said before, the typical idea is the darkness is the danger. And
Mm-hmm.
in this world, I'm trying to avoid that because it's sun everywhere. So let's try and figure out.
So they're safe from the pain, like the pain that the robots are causing to each other through the light weapons for sure.
Yeah, that's true, I
So it's like
suppose.
a different kind of misery, I guess, you
Yeah.
know.
Mm-hmm.
But it
You
certainly
traded
would.
one
Maybe
misery
that's
for
why they
another.
flee initially, is because they get away from the pain and they think it's a safe place. But then they realize without the light, without the pain, they feel nothing.
Mm.
Mm.
Actually, this is kind of interesting because there's now a reversal of the expedition idea
Mm-hmm.
where you're now traveling into the sunlight where it's dangerous, right? Where
Yeah.
you're
Mhm.
exposing yourself and all, not only like your humanity, but also just if robots see you and they're like, oh, you're very clearly human, like we can tell, like you're exposing yourself to being hunted and then being, burned by these sun weapons even more.
Oh
Mhm.
man,
Yeah.
this would be a cool
Uh,
movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I'm like, this is an incredibly fucked up setting, and I'm really digging it, And if we were running it as an RPG, I would imagine that, as you're running expeditions into the sunlight, then there's all sorts of mechanics where you can potentially lose your humanity
Yeah.
or lose control within the robot as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you could design some really weird characters too, because you'd be working with like this post-cyberpunk kind of character, right? That could be all kinds of strange configurations.
100%. 100%. I think we're at the end of the tenets, and I think it's time that we transition into running a little bit of a world building jam. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. So let's go ahead and create our anchor. And for that, I've got to pull up my sheet.
I could see the human ghost inside of you being called your shade, because it's like, you know,
Oh yeah,
reference to
that's
the
great.
big soul, but also
Yeah.
darkness, you know.
All right, so the subject of our anchor is going to be an event. Okay. And the theme that we're going with for this event is going to be love. Interesting. This event, spurred on by love, is going to be an anchor point in the story. We have a bunch of disparate ideas that I don't think go along with love. So how do we make this happen? Any ideas?
BDSM.
You know, I had some Hellraiser ideas in there, Daniel. I'm not even gonna lie to you.
I mean, do we
Wait a minute.
want to avoid the pain angle? So we're good.
Are these robots just creepy sex robots?
That's what I was gonna ask. Like, are we just gonna
no.
avoid the pain sex thing?
Yeah.
Or no.
Okay, we need to avoid creepy sex robots because
Right.
that's too close to Hellraiser at all. So let's not focus on the pain and the BDSM aspect of it, shall we?
Yeah, it's too easy.
Agreed. Okay. Hear me out. Love is somehow related to the release of the human consciousness in some way.
Release
So-
as in the like taking back control, or
Yes,
what?
it's how they take back control. Something that is something involving love awakens the human side within them, because robots are obviously incapable of love. So so maybe there's some kind of thing that we can roll with here where love is the thing that will set humans free, or maybe at least that was the first time. That's the event that we can kind of figure out.
Could it be the very first time that a quote unquote shade gets incorporated into a robot's consciousness?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be like romantic love. It could be familial love. Like,
I was thinking that.
yeah. Like maybe even triggered by somehow like human consciousnesses of family members like recognizing each other in a way, even though they're in different robotic bodies.
Oh, that's neat.
And that sort of brings out all these memories that they had kind of lost.
Oh, I can do a horror twist on that. I don't know how uncomfortable of a horror twist it would be. Like, it could be that two family members who in the past had harmed each other, and when the two machines are practicing their pain therapies on each other, they awaken those memories.
Oh.
I had a similar idea, Daniel, and I like the idea. It creeps me out.
Yeah.
I actually had a little bit of a different twist though, where instead of them enacting it on one another, they were observing someone being tortured, essentially. I suppose what we're going with, and then that elicits such a great empathic response. That's what causes or allows that robot to or that human to kind of, the shade, as you call it, Daniel, to break free and gain control again.
Yeah, I like that.
That's like the originator. And then I think that you could even go, I mean, if you wanted to bring back to horror or perhaps even more tragedy, we could then circle back and be like, well, they see they see their loved one being tortured, and then that awakens something within them, but the loved one is still, trapped within that shell. And so they try and save that robot. They try and save that loved one, but the other one just doesn't feel anything because it's not there yet,
Yeah.
Okay. Is that it? Did we nail it? Or are we thinking about more stuff?
I could also see there being some sort of like additional psychological element of what happens when it's awakened for the first time and it suddenly has control of the body. Like, I imagine that would be really disorienting to
Mhm.
suddenly be able to like control your movements again after being so long being like stuck inside of this thing.
Yeah, there's like a mental atrophy aspect to it.
Yeah.
I could see that person that has then awakened out of love for those it knows are in the other machine starts killing them all.
Hmm.
And so you have a love-based serial killer, love-driven serial killer that is a machine.
See, I'm going to push back on that. I think I think that's a less interesting idea than what we could otherwise potentially do. You know what I mean? Although I think the idea of mercy killing is an interesting one. I don't want to discount that. I think that we can certainly take that idea.
Yeah, I don't mean to supplant the other idea, but that would be a
Right.
path you could take.
Hmm.
For sure. And I'm sure that it's happened at least once before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you could even see it as like saying, like, I feel like I'm going full 80s with this concept, but cyber psychosis,
Right,
right?
that's what I mean, right? Yeah.
Where maybe there's, these sentient or now sentient robots within the jungle who see everyone who's like, you're trapped in a cage. I'm just freeing you.
Yeah, that's what I
That's
mean.
where
You could have this like 80s
right.
kind of like spin on it where it's
Yeah.
like the detective or the who's investigating these murders, he's a robot. And the people who were murdered are robots. And it's like, why is this other robot killing all of my friends? And it's trying to figure this out. And it turns out he has this psychosis and he goes to the psychology of like killing your own kin because you believe they're not who they really are and all that.
I mean, there's a bunch of different options that we can play with here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm picturing like tin box kind of robots, like the ones that they look like your classic 50s robots with like a hat on in this case, and a corduroy vest, but they're otherwise chrome.
So you're basically just trying to do like a Humphrey Bogart movie, but
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
I like it.
Understood. I mean, I think that's gonna nail it, guys. I don't think that we can. Well, actually, that's not true. Is there anything that we want to touch on one last time before we roll for the twist? One thing I do want to kind of think about real quick is what does civilization look like? Because these robots, they don't require food or water. I mean, do they have homes? Are there cities? Are there buildings? Like, what does that look like? Because that's one thing that I'm kind of struggling with right now.
I feel like they wouldn't have a society that's recognizable to us in the physical world, but perhaps in their matrix world, there's a structure that would be compatible with the reader, so that it has metaphors for the things we understand. But I think it would be interesting if the actual physical world is this unrecognizable structure that doesn't make sense to humans.
Can we have an otherwise untouched planet and then have these giant massive chrome spikes that are like essentially Wi-Fi hubs for these things, or like
that
homes where they come back to, or places that they come back to?
Some weird like that.
Yeah.
Because like I want something that when a human looks at this stuff, now that they're already humans, but they look at it, they'll be like, "What the fuck is this?" That's what I want. That kind of response.
Yeah. I could see it also having like an element of just collecting a lot of stuff, since they're so interested in research and data collection, but collecting like actual physical things and storing them in whatever bizarre way they manage to come up with.
Yeah, the most efficient way, whatever that would be.
Yeah.
I mean, to borrow a kind of a cliche, but it would be interesting in this context.
Right, but I mean, they're all going to destroy them anyway. So I suppose that there's less of an emphasis. Maybe we can reconcile that a little bit. Like if they're data collecting, right? That's what they're doing. What's the purpose of that?
Oh, maybe they convert. So, you find some object to study. You don't need the physical object. You just need a map of its data. So there could be huge like landfills throughout this world just full of stuff that they've collected and discarded so they can load the data into their nodes.
Interesting.
I like that, yeah.
And when you say stuff, my brain immediately said carcasses.
All the life that was on this world at some point.
Yes. That's actually even more horrifying now because
mass graves.
Yeah. Remember at the very beginning when I said, is this a genocide story? And you were
Yeah,
like,
it is.
nah.
In
Guess
this
what?
way, yes.
Yeah, it is now.
I like
yeah.
that. And it could be
Yeah.
the piles not only of corpses, but of cities and
Mhm.
civilizations that they've just processed, you know?
Vegetation, animals,
Yeah.
sentient life, non-sentient life, rocks,
Yeah.
minerals, technology, everything. Yeah.
Is the jungle kind of like encroaching on these landfills and growing through and despite it?
I could see that being cool, like absorbing all the life that
refuse.
used to be there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's a giant wasteland of just junk and then nodes everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I think that's where we're going to wrap it up. I think that's good. I think we're going to go ahead and roll for the twist. And dear God, oh my God, there's so many bad ones that we could get here, guys.
Romance.
Oh
Better not
no.
we don't have It Was Aliens, right? That's not on there anymore.
What was that?
It Was Aliens isn't on there anymore, please.
I think that's been used.
Oh God.
But there's some really bad ones, y'all. I'm just saying.
They're all dwarves.
Okay. rolling for the twist. Well, that's just redundant. Okay. The twist is now make everything grimdark. Guys, we fucking already did make everything grimdark.
It is extremely
This
grimdark.
episode is 45 minutes of us making the setting grimdark. You know what? We're going to keep this twist. And we're gonna find a way to make it even more grim.
More grimdark? Oh my God!
Just
I'm
turn
not
it right
giving
up
up
to
on this
11.
twist. God damn it!
Wow.
This is how it's gonna be. It's on the list. It's getting done. And just so happens that there's a little bit of overlap. You know what? Fuck it. And if you guys want to see how we make this grimdark world even grimdarkerer, then you're gonna have to listen to next episode of Worldbuild with us. Remember that if you want us to build your world, you can always send us an email at worldbuildwithus@gmail.com, or you can send us a tweet over at Let's Worldbuild. Or if you want to come and join our community over on Discord, there's a link for that in the description. And if you think we're super fucking cool, or if this is a weird spite thing for you, you can always donate money to our Patreon. Link for that also in the description. Okay, this has been a hell of an episode. Remember that we love you very much. A big thank you to Seth for coming up with this prompt, and we're going to make it through this together until next week.